اهدنا الصراط المستقيم
يا أيها الناس كلوا مما في الأرض حلالا طيبا ولا تتبعوا خطوات الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين إنما يأمركم بالسوء والفحشاء وأن تقولوا على الله ما لا تعلمون رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ثم أما بعد. Once again, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We are continuing from ayah number 167. Ya ayyuhan nas, people, kulu mimma fil ardi halalan tayyiba. Consume from whatever is on the earth that is permissible, halal, open, tayyiban, good and pure. Tayyib combines two meanings, goodness and purity. وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. And don't follow the footsteps of shaitan, the devil. إِنَّهُ لَكُمْ عَدُوٌّ مُبِينٌ. Certainly, especially for you, there's no doubt about it, he is an open enemy. The ayah about halal consumption comes right after false followers. Why? Because when people follow trends, they end up crossing the lines of what's permissible. That is the fundamental problem of people following different kinds of trends. They don't longer care about the lines drawn by Allah. They would rather care about the lines drawn by the norms of their own culture, their own clique. So immediately after, the real line is drawn. You can be part of a society, you can be part of a culture. There's nothing wrong with you following trends to a certain extent, but the line will be drawn when you cross the line of that which is permissible. كُلُوا مِمَّا فِي الْأَرْضِ حَلَالًا طَيِّبًا. And this call is to all of humanity, interestingly enough. Ya ayyuhan nasu. Ya ayyuhan nas. Why? Because it was, like I mentioned, this following of trends is not just an issue within the ummah, but the original context of the ayat is those who are outside of Islam rethinking about coming into Islam because they don't want to let go of the haram that they've already become accustomed to. So, if you do follow the footsteps of shaitan, you're handing authority over to him. And over time, shaitan takes more and more control over you. Like in the beginning, shaitan, all he can do is waswasa. He can whisper to you, and he can get you to do stuff by trying to convince you and constantly entice you into taking the wrong kind of action. But then what can happen over time? Over time, once you give in to shaitan, he gains more and more authority over you. And you lose less and less, more and more control you start losing. And so if you do give in to the footsteps of shaitan, إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ, he will suggest and even command. Amr in Arabic is not just command, it's a spectrum of things. It starts from suggesting something and can go all the way to commanding something. So when we say Amr bil Ma'ruf, it can be a spectrum of things. You're commanding someone to do good, you're also suggesting, advising, encouraging, all those things in between until you get to the final, which is commanding someone to do something good. So shaitan can start with suggesting you to do something wrong, with evil, but eventually gain enough authority to even command for you to do evil things, as-su, wal-fahsha, and shameless things. So there are two kinds of wrong deeds that are mentioned, as-su and al-fahsha. As-su are things that are evil and ugly in and of themselves. Saw'a is used for a filthy corpse. Like you look at it and you say that's disgusting. Like a corpse of an animal on the street. Right? That's saw'a. Su is something evil and ugly in and of itself. It's not even appealing. It's not even attractive. But shaitan will make you do it. Things like backbiting or foul language, there's no appeal in them. There's no attraction in them, but people do them anyway, these filthy acts, because of the waswasa of shaitan. Then al-fahsha. Al-fahsha are things that do have appeal. They have an allure to them, they have an attraction to them. Shamelessness, lewdness, vile behavior. وَأَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. And that so first he'll command you to su, and then al-fahsha, and then eventually, if you give in that much, then he'll push the envelope further. The first thing was he'll get you to do evil deeds, then the worse off even al-fahsha. If you give him that much, then you've given him almost ultimate authority. Then he'll get you to say things against Allah that you have no knowledge of. In other words, he'll justify your misbehavior and say, well, Islam never says that. Allah never said I can't do this. What's so wrong about this? You ever heard that kind of logic? Like people will say, you shouldn't go. Like I met this teenager this last week, for example, who said, Yeah, I go to parties, and all the other Muslim boys in school have girlfriends. Why can't I have one? So he literally said, and it's sad that it's true. So, how do you respond? What do you even say? Oh, Allah never says you can't have one. He just says you can't do zina. There's nothing wrong with, being friends. أَن تَقُولُوا عَلَى اللَّهِ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. He'll get you to say against Allah what you have no knowledge of. He didn't go and actually read and study what Allah says. He's just saying it. There's no knowledge of it. Casually making, blanket statements about the religion without any knowledge, just to be able to justify your own petty behavior. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ اتَّبِعُوا مَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهِ. When it is said to them, follow what Allah sent down, قَالُوا بَلْ نَتَّبِعُ مَا أَلْفَيْنَا عَلَيْهِ آبَاءَنَا. They say, no, we're going to follow what we found. Alfa is to find something, and it's even done by animals. When an animal is walking around and a dog finds something and starts digging at it or picking it up with his teeth, that's alfa. It doesn't require a human intellect to find something. That kind of finding is called alfa. Alfa yulfi ilfa. On the other hand, wijdan, wajada, is something that's a human activity. So this is actually less intellectual. Whatever we found, whatever we stumbled our forefathers following, we're going to follow it. We don't have to think about it. The fact that our ancestors did it is enough for it to be legitimate for us. We don't have to give it any thought. We're not going to reconsider our traditions or think about the rational, validity of them. There's no point. وَمَا أَلْفَيْنَا عَلَيْهِ آبَاءَنَا. And then Allah says, and by the way, you're not going to think about what your forefathers did? You're just going to follow it because you stumbled on it? Well, let me tell you something. Your forefathers didn't think about it either. أَوَلَوْ كَانَ آبَاؤُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ شَيْئًا. Isn't it the case, hadn't it been the case that their forefathers, their ancestors themselves hadn't understood a single thing? وَلَا يَهْتَدُونَ. Nor were they themselves committed to guidance. They weren't even committed to guidance themselves. Allah calls out their ancestries also. وَمَثَلُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا. And the example of those who've decided to disbelieve mindlessly, just saying we're just whatever we found our ancestors on, that's enough for us, we're committed. What is their example of? الَّذِي يَنْعِقُ. The one who makes a loud sound. بِمَا لَا يَسْمَعُ. The one who's calling an animal to an animal that does not hear. لَا يَسْمَعُ إِلَّا دُعَاءً وَنِدَاءً. Except calls and cries. A shepherd calls an animal, and no matter what he uses, the animal doesn't understand what the words themselves are. So if a sheep is going the wrong way and the shepherd goes, no, don't turn there, don't turn there, is the sheep going to say, oh, I'm sorry? It doesn't do that. It just keeps going until it falls off the cliff. So the calls and cries of a shepherd are useless, except if he uses the stick and scares them and pushes them a certain way. But the animal doesn't hear anything except sounds. Anything except sounds. The comparison is being made of the Prophet making, no matter what the Prophet says, is like the shepherd. And these sheep are so mindless, no matter what it says, it has no effect on them. It has no effect. Interestingly though, in the end, do the sheep still end up following the shepherd? So these guys are even worse. These guys are they're even worse than cattle. Allah says, أُولَٰئِكَ كَالْأَنْعَامِ بَلْ هُمْ أَضَلُّ. They're even worse off. Then Allah adds, first of all, they can't understand anything. They're like sheep. Then, صُمٌّ بُكْمٌ عُمْيٌ. They're deaf, they're mute, they're blind. They're deaf, they can't hear anything. They literally can't hear anything. When someone's trying to go on a path and they can't hear, like it's dark, imagine, they can't hear. They don't know where to go. If they don't know where to go, at least they can ask for help. They can say, hey, I'm over here, can you come get me? But they're bukum, they can't even speak. Not only they can't hear where the help is, they can't even ask for it. And then on top of that, they're blind. So maybe they can't be heard and they can't hear, but at least they could see, they can't even see. All the doors to guidance are closed. صُمٌّ بُكْمٌ عُمْيٌ فَهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. Then they're not going to understand. These people let them be. The sheep attitude is from the previous ayah. Whatever our ancestors were doing is good enough for us. That's how we do things around here. Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu. Now the conversation comes to believers. Believers, you don't become like this. Don't allow your blind following of tradition to corrupt what the actual teachings of the religion are. Over time, what happened to Islam? Musa alayhi salam was given pure Islam. And eventually it got mixed and corrupted and things came into it, and then eventually those Muslims couldn't even tell the halal from haram anymore. Everything got mixed together. Does that happen to our ummah too? The messenger was given pure Islam. This is halal, this is haram. And over time, things started getting mixed in. And now we're now, there's a murky line between what's permissible and what's not. Allah says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, kulu min tayyibati ma razaqnakum. Consume from the good and pure things we've provided you. Similar to Ya ayyuhan nas, kulu mimma fil ardi halalan tayyiban. But a little bit different too. The good and pure things that we've provided you, washkuru lillahi. And be grateful to Allah. The statement, be grateful to Allah, here in particular is very important. The believer is being told the only reason you'll pursue haram is because you're not grateful enough for the halal that you have in front of you. When you have in front of you permissible things, and yes, they're less than what you originally had. It's less, but you should be grateful because what you have is good and pure. These are the good and pure things that we've provided you. وَاشْكُرُوا لِلَّهِ إِن كُنْتُمْ إِيَّاهُ تَعْبُدُونَ. If in fact it is only He that you have enslaved yourselves to continuously. Allah makes halal and haram a matter of ibadah. You know, there are people who worship Allah a lot. They pray, they do like i'tikaf, they go to umrah every year, but they consume haram. They earn haram and they eat haram. Right? They say, at least I'm doing ibadah. Allah says, no, you wouldn't be eating haram if you were actually doing ibadah. إِن كُنْتُمْ إِيَّاهُ تَعْبُدُونَ إِنَّمَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْمَيْتَةَ. He has only made haram upon you. Innama is pretty cool here. Look, I haven't made too many things haram for you. I've only made these things haram for you. What are those few things? Well, He made forbidden for you al-mayta, the deceased animal, the animal that dies of natural causes, wad-dama, and blood, wa-lahm al-khinziri, and the flesh of swine, wa-ma uhilla bihi li ghayri Allahi, and whatever has been slaughtered for other than Allah. In other words, what's been sacrificed in the name of other than Allah. You know, it's easy for us to read that and just go on like, okay, yeah, flesh of swine, got it. Don't eat boar's head, good enough. And He says corpses, you know, dead animals, that's easy enough. Hard to find that anyway. Blood, okay, disgusting, not going to drink that. Great. You know, for those guys living in Medina, they're not living in a society where there's a Walmart next door. Their animal supply is very limited. Their food supply is very limited. And they don't have like tons and tons and tons of cattle. They have a limited supply of animals. It's a desert climate. So if they own a few pigs, they're relying on those pigs to be food for like 6 months. In one statement, Allah says you can't have swine. That's 6 months of food gone, just like that, gone. Oh, and you can't eat dead animals. You think in that extreme heat, animals die sometimes of dehydration or die in the heat? Sure. Well, when they die, that animal was at least going to provide them a month worth of food, a couple of meals. Even that you can't have. So even blood. To eat that, to drink that, I mean, there's a limited supply of liquids. And they used to use that in stew. Because they don't have a lot of liquid. It's a very dry climate. Allah has basically cut their food supply at least by half. At least by half. And they're not a wealthy people to begin with. And then He's telling them, be grateful for what I have left you with. وَاشْكُرُوا لِلَّهِ إِن كُنْتُمْ إِيَّاهُ تَعْبُدُونَ. Then He says, وَفَمَنِ اضْطُرَّ. Then whoever was forced, غَيْرَ بَاغٍ وَلَا عَادٍ. Without being rebellious. You know, almost, okay. Bagh means when somebody says, hey, don't touch that. Oh yeah? What now? Don't drink that. Don't drink this, you mean? Don't drink this? Okay. This is bagh. Oh, you tell me not to do it? Now I will. I wasn't going to do it before, but now that you told me not to, I'm gonna. Okay? That's baghin. Oh, can eat pork? Yeah, I could do it, man. Let me show you how it's done. You know, I'm not scared. Just out of that. Wala adin, not out of animosity. In other words, I can't eat anything. God, I'm tired of just eating the same thing. I can't take it anymore. Take a bite. This is adin. If you ate it, if you are forced to eat it for neither of those two illegitimate reasons, it's a life and death situation. You're about to die, you're in the desert, there's no food available, there's a pig right there. And you're about to die. Then at that point, فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ. Then there's no sin on him. There's no harm, you can eat it. Life and death situation. But even then, don't say, well, if I'm eating, might as well, finish it. Don't do that. Enough to survive. But at that point, you say you feel dirty. A Muslim would feel dirty inside if they ate haram. Even if they were a life and death situation. They'd feel dirty inside. So Allah says, He comes to their aid and says, فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ. No, there's no sin on him. Don't worry, no sin whatsoever. La nafiya li jins. Fala ithma alayhi. No sin whatsoever will fall upon him. Inna Allah ghafurun rahim. No doubt about it, Allah is extremely forgiving. Exceedingly forgiving. Always merciful. I translate that and I don't explain it. The word ghafur is ism mubalagha. It's called ism mubalagha. Extreme. Rahim is ism sifa. Ism sifa means something that's constant. When he mentions his forgiveness, he talks about it being extreme. When he talks about his mercy, he talks about it being constant. Being extreme is not the same as being constant. If Allah said He's always forgiving, then we'd go crazy. We'd start doing all kinds of wrong things because Allah would say He is always forgiving. He doesn't say He's always forgiving, He says He's extremely forgiving. But He says He's always merciful. That in and of itself keeps us in line. Because if Allah's permanent policy was to forgive, then we would be pretty messed up. Then what would happen to us is what happens to the Christians. The floodgates of sin open. Why? Because I'm already forgiven. Because I'm forgiven, I can do all kinds of stuff. I have Jesus in my heart. It's all good. And I've had some really peculiar conversations with certain members of the Christian faith, but inshallah for another time, about this issue of forgiveness. إِنَّمَا يَأْمُرُكُمْ Actually, I got left behind. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَكْتُمُونَ مَا أَنزَلْنَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ Those who hide, no doubt, what Allah sent down from out of the book, وَيَشْتَرُونَ بِهِ ثَمَنًا قَلِيلًا And they sell it off for a small price. أُولَٰئِكَ مَا يَأْكُلُونَ فِي بُطُونِهِمْ إِلَّا النَّارِ Those are the people, they are not consuming into their bellies anything but fire. This is talking about a very powerful concept that happens, or phenomena, social phenomena that happens in religion when it becomes corrupt. Religion can become an industry. Religion can turn into an industry where you sell fatwas. Bani Israel, the people that held religious control, the knowledgeable, people would go to them for religious verdicts and answers. And they would become the sole source of those answers. And if they give people answers that they don't want to hear, what people don't want to hear, then the client base will move to somewhere else. So they have to give people answers they would like to hear. And so it became selling the ayat of Allah. You can look at the text and basically interpret it in a way that will justify what you want, the answer you want to get. In Islam, the shady way we do this is we say, well, there's a difference of opinion. You don't know what you're talking about, you still throw in, well, there's a difference of opinion. That's our easy cop-out. Right? You have no idea what it is. You don't know who said what their proofs are, but that line is your justification for everything's halal. Right? Allah knows when you're playing games with the religion. You could convince anybody else. You can't play games with Allah Azza wa Jal. Nonetheless, the religion can become, because religion is power. It is. People that have a knowledge of religion, and a powerful knowledge of religion, strong knowledge of religion, are in a position of power, no doubt. A huge responsibility and huge power. People that hold a sermon, people that give the khutbah, people that give fatwas, the ulama, the people that interpret the sharia, they're in this huge position of power. And when they start using that knowledge to their strategic advantage, personal advantage, then Allah says the only thing they're putting in their bellies is fire. أُولَٰئِكَ مَا يَأْكُلُونَ فِي بُطُونِهِمْ إِلَّا النَّارِ وَلَا يُكَلِّمُهُمُ اللَّهُ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ Allah will not be speaking to them on Judgment Day. وَلَا يُزَكِّيهِمْ And He won't be purifying them. These are people of knowledge that won't be purified. People of knowledge, because they turned religion into an industry. وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ And they will have painful punishment. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ اشْتَرَوُا الضَّلَالَةَ بِالْهُدَىٰ Those are the people that sold misguidance, or sold guidance in exchange for misguidance, or the way to look at it is they purchased misguidance in exchange for guidance. وَالْعَذَابَ بِالْمَغْفِرَةِ And they purchased punishment in exchange for forgiveness. فَمَا أَصْبَرَهُمْ عَلَى النَّارِ Wow, how amazingly patient they are against the fire. It's remarkable. They've got some really thick skin. This is sarcasm from Allah. Wow, how awesome they are in their patience against the fire. مَا أَصْبَرَهُمْ عَلَى النَّارِ أَفْعَالُ التَّعَجُّبِ ذَلِكَ بِأَنَّ اللَّهَ نَزَّلَ الْكِتَابَ بِالْحَقِّ That is because, why are they being thrown into the fire? And why did this happen to them anyway? Why did they sell out the ayat? That happened because Allah sent the book with truth, with purpose. وَإِنَّ الَّذِينَ اخْتَلَفُوا فِي الْكِتَابِ لَفِي شِقَاقٍ بَعِيدٍ And those who disagree in the book, they have fallen into a schism. In other words, they keep falling into division after division after division for their personal agendas. They keep creating differences of opinion. In this next ayah, we're going to learn You know, the tahweel, the change of the qibla was a big subject. And then corruption in the religion was a big subject. Now we're learning the balanced view of what does it mean to be a good Muslim, a good person, the overall picture. You know, this ayah is the comprehensive view of goodness in Islam. What does it mean to be a good person? And before we talk about this ayah very briefly, we should say that there are two ends of the spectrum within the definition of goodness. On the one hand, you have people that they take care of their ritual worship. They pray on time. They wear they commit themselves to the proper dress code in Islam. Their dietary restrictions are very strict. Their social gatherings are very strict. They've commit themselves to certain acts of worship and they're very committed to them. And you can tell. You can just look at them and say, that guy is pretty serious about religion. At the same time, there is no consideration to ethics. Courtesy to your neighbor, courtesy to coworker, honesty at the workplace, dealing fairly with family, those kinds of things. Religious rituals, everything is on point. Ethics, morality, justice, nowhere. So the guy, for instance, has a long beard and he's like really religious, hafiz, he recites Quran beautifully, but he's a really bad employer. Doesn't pay his employees on time. Doesn't pay them. He takes loans and never gets back to people. That kind of thing. You know. And you know, a lot of this happens, eventually, you know what people do? Most Muslims aren't religious that much. When they look at people that do look religious, they say, all these guys are just con artists. They look all righteous so that they can scam you. That's the picture most people have of Muslims. Most Muslims that aren't that religious, that's what their view is of women that wear hijab and men that have beards. They're all just, you know, hypocrites. They look like that, but they're really just someone else. Those mullahs, you know. On the other extreme, you have another definition of goodness. On the one hand, it's like goodness is proper dress code for salat and be at the masjid for jama'ah and all this stuff. On the other hand is, I'm a nice person, I don't hurt anyone. So I don't do anything bad. I go to work on time, I'm good to I do honest work at my job. I'm a nice neighbor, I pay my taxes, I take care of my kids. I don't commit any crimes. I'm a good person. I don't have to pray to be a good person. I don't have to go to Hajj to be a good person. I don't have to fast to be a good person. I'm a good person, I give charity too. So you have this like moral, ethical kind of definition of being good, and you have this religious, ritualistic kind of definition of being good. Like that's a good Muslim and that's a good person, you say. Right? You got these two contradicting, almost different definitions. What Allah does in this ayah is He tells us the balance between those two sides, the ritualistic and the ethical side. He combines the two. So we have a balanced picture of what the personality of a Muslim should look like. لَيْسَ الْبِرَّ أَن تُوَلُّوا وُجُوهَكُمْ قِبَلَ الْمَشْرِقِ وَالْمَغْرِبِ. Turning your faces to the east and west isn't all there is to righteousness. That's not all there is. Though Allah has highlighted that multiple times so far, He's saying, look, that's a big deal, but that isn't everything. There's more to the religion. Don't reduce the religion to one or two things. And that's the other common habit that Muslims have, that Muslims can tend to have. They're good at something, or they really like something about the religion, and their whole religion becomes just that one thing. Their whole religion gets reduced to the one thing that they want to focus on. You know? وَلَكِنَّ الْبِرَّ مَنْ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ. However, goodness, real goodness, is materialized. I say the word materialized on purpose because bir means goodness. Goodness. It says goodness is the one who believed in Allah, which is strange. Saying this, even in English, it sounds strange. Goodness is the one who believed in Allah. Actually what it's saying is, goodness is materialized, goodness is manifest in someone who believed in Allah. Man amana billahi. Wal yawmil akhiri. And in the last day. Wal malaikati wal kitabi wal nabiyyin. And the angels, the books, and prophets. Please listen to this carefully. The first part of the definition of iman here, the first part of goodness, believing in Allah, the last day, and then three things are mentioned: angels, books, and prophets. Understand that there are three components of our faith. There is number one, belief in Allah. Number two, in this ayah, belief in the akhirah. In the Quran, when it talks about iman in the unseen, it's either talking about belief in Allah or in the akhirah, or the third component, belief in revelation. And revelation is three parts. It's a message that is delivered by a certain means. What's the means of delivery? Angels. And who does it come to? The certified teacher, the prophet. So revelation, the concept of revelation, risala it's called in Arabic, risala, the concept of delivering a message, is three things: angels, book, prophets, all three. So the core components of our faith are three: belief in Allah, belief in an afterlife, and belief in revelation. Those are the three main components. The Quran is either talking about a belief in Allah, or talking about belief in the afterlife, or talking about belief in revelation, and those three things come under that: the book, the angels, and the prophets. Those three things. So you understand why those three things are mentioned at the beginning? The fundamentals of our faith. But this ayah is not about faith. This ayah is about what? About goodness. So even the organization of these three things in this ayah has to do with goodness. It has to do with righteousness. How so? The number one reason you should be driven to do good is what reason? Allah. You want to make Allah happy. That's the highest reason somebody can have to do good. It's not the only reason. I know it sounds weird, but yeah, it's not the only reason. It's not the only reason you do good deeds, that you want to make Allah happy. There is another reason. I want Jannah. I'm doing good deeds because I want Jannah. Oh, and I'm staying away from bad deeds because I don't want Jahannam. Those are also good reasons or no? So we have multiple reasons. The highest possible reason you can have for doing good deeds is which reason? You want to make Allah happy. Allah mentions man amana billahi first. The first driver to do good deeds. But that's not to say that the next motivation for doing good deeds isn't legitimate. It's there, it's lesser, but it's still there, and it's legitimate. And that is al-yawm al-akhir. I'm doing good deeds because I'm worried about al-yawm al-akhir. It's a legitimate reason. Now that those two legitimate motivations are there, then the question arises, how will I know what good deeds are? Okay, fine, I want to be good. How do I know what it is to be good? What is the next part of our faith answer? The first two are the whys. Why do I want to be good? For Allah and the last day. Two good reasons. Then how do I be good? What should I follow? What Allah brings in the book by means of angels to the prophets. You understand how it's connected? وَالْمَلَائِكَةِ وَالْكِتَابِ وَالنَّبِيِّينَ. Now interestingly, Allah didn't say kutub, He said kitab, singular. At the end of the surah, we're going to find كُلٌّ آمَنَ بِاللَّهِ وَمَلَائِكَتِهِ وَكُتُبِهِ وَرُسُلِهِ, plural. Here we find singular. Why? Because the Jews are being talked to, and Allah says now the only way to be good is the book, Quran. That option is closed. Not all books. Now it's this book. You can't, because if they hear kutub here, what they're going to think? Oh, okay, our book is good too then. We can just keep following ours. Nope, now it's singular. Al-Kitab. وَالنَّبِيِّينَ. وَآتَ الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ. Now the switch happens after faith. And this person who materializes goodness, once they have this kind of faith, they give wealth. آتَ الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ. Against his love of it. Against his love of wealth. He loves his money. Everybody does. It takes hard work to earn it. So spending it is hard. But against your love, you fight your love of money and you give anyway. And who do you give it to? The people who it's hardest to give to. ذَوِي الْقُرْبَى, those who possess the closest relations. Al-Qurba, closeness. Or the closest relations. You know, the closest relationships you have are the ones you fight with the most. You know that, right? You fight with your cousins the most, your siblings the most. Fight uncles between uncles and extended family, all these fights happen. Eid is the best time for drama, right, in most families. And Allah says when you're going to give, first of all, you hate giving money because it's yours. And who do you have to give? The people you fight with the most. ذَوِي الْقُرْبَى. I have to give my uncle? He hates me. Yeah, but he needs it. He needs it. There's a reason Allah made you His family. He could have made nicer people your family. He could have, but He chose you to be their family, them to be your family. There's a reason Allah chose Abu Lahab to be the Prophet's uncle. He could have had nicer uncles. I mean, it's possible, right? It's Allah's wisdom. He chose the people in your family are there because Allah wants them to be there. Don't think of it like, I hate my family, I can't stand them. I don't want to be around them. You have to give them first. The will qurba. Then wal yatama, then the orphan. How do we know who the orphans are if we're not connected with our own family and with our own community? Nobody wears a sticker on their head that they're an orphan. If we go to each other's homes, we know who the orphans are. وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينَ, and those who can't help themselves. Again, we can't help each other. We can't help the masakeen unless we know who they are. We don't know who they are unless they beg. And if they beg, then they're really humiliating themselves. At the end of the surah, Allah will say, لَا يَسْأَلُونَ النَّاسَ إِلْحَافًا. They don't wrap themselves around people begging them. You ever seen that? Like beggars wrapping themselves around people at the airports in poor countries or bus stops, and like, wherever they get out of the car, these kids just wrap themselves around just 5 rupees, 5 riyal, something. You ever see that? Allah says, لَا يَسْأَلُونَ النَّاسَ إِلْحَافًا. They don't ask people like that. They don't beg. Just because they don't beg doesn't mean they're not masakeen. They need help too. But they don't beg. We have to know who they are. If we're connected to our community, we would know who they are. وَابْنَ السَّبِيلِ, and those in the midst of travel. If you really know your community, you're going to be able to tell, that guy's traveling. Sister, are you from out of town? Do you need help? Yeah, I was going to go get a hotel. Why are you getting a hotel? Stay over here. And we would be fighting each other to keep them in our homes. Because we know that the guest is a huge honor from Allah, that we get to take care of a guest who's in the middle of travel. What do? Your cousin's coming over, you say, I'm going to email you the list of local hotels. There's a sale going on. Okay? Before they even say, can we stay over, you just say, yeah, there's really nice hotels here. Okay, I gotta go. Right? Can't have people over. And somebody comes over, you come home, you tell the husband, listen, my brother's coming over. Really, your brother? Why? I'll stay a couple of days. Couple of days? Where's he going to stay? In those 4 empty rooms we have. Yeah, but I like them empty. Not over there. Can he stay in the garage? We hate hospitality. We have to become people that love hospitality. With no strings attached, by the way. With no strings attached. I'm put in a really difficult position. When I travel, I get invited to stay at people's homes. And before Bayina took off, I used to stay at people's homes. If I was invited, I stayed with them. Now I can't. Because it's like this weird thing now. We're like, can we take a picture with you? I'm like, I'm sleeping. Like, why are you getting weird? Like, there's one time somebody invited me to their house for lunch. Everything's normal, and then all of a sudden they bring out their iPad too. I FaceTime my cousin from India. He's like a huge fan of yours. Say salam to him. It's like, Assalamu alaikum. It get awkward. Like there's some other strings attached. It's not just hospitality. Some other stuff. And then people have weird concepts, because the Quran isn't clear. It's so sad. It's like the antithesis of what I'm trying to teach. They bring their kid over. I say, could you kind of touch his head? Make dua for him. So I go, he will be in the NBA now. Right? What do you want? Oh God, have you not been listening to anything else? So I don't stay at people's homes. And then the craziest thing that happened, I don't say tangent, but I'll take less than 30 seconds. Then people invite me to their house, and other speakers, I'm sure this happens too, they stay at their house and then they call their other Muslim friends in the community, he stayed at our house, right? I heard you invited him too. He stayed at our house. Just wanted to let you know. If you want to see me, you can come over. Later though, we're just having alone time right now. Fights break out in the community over where Abdul Nasser is going to stay. We're both like, yeah, okay, you know what? We're done. Undisclosed hotel. That's what we're going to do. But hospitality in general, if you're anonymous, hospitality is a great thing. To be able to invite people over and be able to stay with them. And, that's part of goodness. That's part of, it shows that you're concerned for humanity in general. وَآتَ الْمَالَ عَلَى حُبِّهِ ذَوِي الْقُرْبَى وَالْيَتَامَى وَالْمَسَاكِينِ وَابْنَ السَّبِيلِ وَالسَّائِلِينَ, and those who ask. Of course, when we think of charity, we think first of those who ask. Allah put those who ask at the end. وَالسَّائِلِينَ وَفِي الرِّقَابِ, and those who are tied in the necks. Those who have bonds around their necks. People in slavery, imprisoned, that need to be bailed out, need to be rescued. Also, nowadays, modern slavery, it's invisible chains. It's called a mortgage. It's called student loans. It's called debt, business debt. People are buried under it. They're dying. They're choking. If you know people like that, helping them out. وَفِي الرِّقَابِ وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةَ وَآتَى الزَّكَاةَ, and this person established the salat and gave zakat. Where did salat and zakat come? After a list of first faith. Faith is, it's like foundation of a building. You don't even see faith. Then the first floor you see is this person's very giving. Even though they love their wealth, and that's natural, they're very giving. Then the second floor on top of that Allah built was they establish prayer and give zakat. Isn't that something? When we think of a good Muslim, what's the first thing that comes in our head? Salat. That's it. And by the way, zakat itself is charity, isn't it? Zakat itself is charity. But Allah just dedicated this whole long part of this ayah to charitable giving and being benevolent, and then went back to charity again just to teach us this is not zakat, this is above and beyond zakat. You're giving outside of zakat is like if you don't give it, you're criminal. That's not an accomplishment. Nobody said, I paid taxes this year. You know? Congratulations, you're not going to jail. That's not an accomplishment. That's the law. This ayah is about goodness. Being good means you go above and beyond the minimum. You go above and beyond that. وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةَ established the salat and gave the zakat. Also there's a difference between وَصَلَّى وَأَقَامَ الصَّلَاةَ. Salah means he prayed. Aqama الصَّلَاةَ means he established the prayer. Means prayer is an institution in this person's life. Their life revolves around it. They established, like, you put pillars up in your house. You have to, everything, all the furniture has to go around those pillars. Salat are pillars in this person's life. Everything they do has to go around it. All their schedules, all their appointments, all their work, their sleep schedule, their waking schedule has to fit around salat. Salat doesn't have to be fit. Everything else has to fit with salat. There's aqama salat. Wa'ata zakat. Then he gave that which purifies his wealth, the rest of his wealth. The one that he can consume has to be pure. To do that he has to give zakat. Wa'ata zakat. Then Allah switches to nominal form. Everything was verbal so far. So he switches to the part where these people have this permanent quality. وَالْمُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ. And they fulfill their promise. These are people that always, always, always fulfill their words. إِذَا عَاهَدُوا. If and when they get into a promise. If they get into an agreement, they will fulfill it. That's these are the people of goodness. And he didn't even stop there. وَالْمُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ إِذَا عَاهَدُوا. By the way, what are the promises we get into? Our employments are agreements. Students that are coming to our full-time program and their communities have sponsored them partially, fully, whatever, is an agreement. Their end of it is they sponsor, your end of it is you will cry, sweat, cry tears and sweat blood until you understand a lesson. You will lose all sleep and all entertainment until you learn it, because it's an amana. You've been trusted with something, and I'll fulfill my trust. That first. Our jobs are a trust. Our citizenships are a trust. Our neighbors are trusting us with something. When you're driving on the road, you're being trusted with a responsibility. You have your life and other people's lives in your hands, literally. It's a trust. Your license is an agreement. Your license in and of itself is an agreement that you'll abide by certain laws. It's a trust. I shouldn't have taqwa of the law because of a red light. It's because it's an agreement. That should be enough for a Muslim. I'm into an agreement. Our employers give us like 9 to 5 jobs, and most people, they work 9 to 3 or 9 to 4 or maybe 11 to 2, and the rest of the time they're watching Islamic videos at work, and they're using the office copier to make MSA flyers, right? What kind of trust is that? That's Islamic work? Shame on you. Shame on you. Be ethical. وَالْمُوفُونَ بِعَهْدِهِمْ. They fulfill their promises if and when they get into them. إِذَا عَاهَدُوا وَالصَّابِرِينَ. Notice sabirina is mansub. It was mufuna was rafa. Sabirina is nasab. It changed. The inflection changed. This is a special kind of nasb called nasb al-madh, which means nasb used to praise something over and above everything else. It is as though Allah is saying, like, my wife sometimes she'll send me to the groceries, and she'll say, okay, I need the milk, eggs, cereal, okay, and diapers. The way she says diapers means without milk we'll be fine. Without cereal, without bread, things will be okay. Don't forget the diapers. So it'll be like milkuna, breaduna, cerealuna, and diaperina. That'll be nasab. Wal-mufuna wa what? As-sabirina. Above and beyond everything else. These people, the thing that defines them more than anything else, The climax of their goodness is that they are patient, perseverant, constant, persistent. They're persistent people. They stick to it. You know why Allah mentions that at the end and why He highlights it so much? Because if you don't have that, everything else is seasonal. You can have Iman, it can go away, get weak. You can establish Salah for a couple of months and then you get loose. You can give Zakah a couple of years, then you don't give it. You can fulfill your promises for a while and then you become loose in those. What's the thing that will hold your goodness together? Persistence, consistency, constancy. If you don't have that, you're done. وَالصَّابِرِينَ. And then what kind of constancy? فِي الْبَأْسَاءِ. In difficult times. In times where there's a difficult friction climate, where things aren't looking good for Muslims. وَالضَّرَّاءِ. And when times become hard, like economic hardship, pain. وَحِينَ الْبَأْسِ. And in the middle of the battlefield, in the middle of the war. Al-Ba'sa is times of war. حِينَ الْبَأْسِ, in the midst of the battle, they've still got sabr, they don't let go of their faith. أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ صَدَقُوا. Those are the ones that have confirmed the truth. Those are the ones that have proven that they really are good. وَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُتَّقُونَ. And those in fact are the people of taqwa. Allah is saying at the end, the people of goodness are the people of taqwa. This surah began its guidance for people who have taqwa. And Allah is saying the people of goodness, that's who they are. That's what taqwa is. Now, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, some laws now. Now that goodness has been defined in the larger sense, now you can fit all of the injunctions Allah gives you and compartmentalize them properly. Everything has its place. Now you have a sense of priority. This is what it means to be good. You know? Allah Azza wa Jalla says, those of you who have Iman, kutiba alaykumul qisasu. Qisas, you know, equal retribution, was mandated especially upon you. Fil qatla, in the matter of murder, in the matter of the one that's been killed. Al-hurru bil-hurri, a slave one, or a free one for a free one. The free for the free. Wal-abdu bil-abdi, and the slave for the slave. Wal-untha bil-untha, and the female for the female. Sounds really confusing. One guy, one slave got killed, one free man got killed in that tribe. So what do? We're going to kill a free man from your tribe. Is that what it's saying? Or if one slave got killed over here, we're going to take any random slave from here and kill him. No. You notice how everything has al on it? Al-hurru bil-hurri wal-abdu bil-abdi wal-untha bil-untha. You see that? It means the slave murderer, the free murderer will pay with his own life. The slave murderer will pay with his own life. And the female will pay with her own life. It's like saying the free person with the same free person. Al makes it the same. If you put tanween there, it could be two different people. Put al on both of them, it's the same person. A free man cannot say, well, I committed the murder, but here, take my slave and kill him. He can't do that. He has to pay himself. Wal abdu bil abdi. And a slave committed a murder, the master can't say, well, I like this slave, take this other one. No, that slave will have to pay. Al-untha bil-untha, a girl will have to pay for herself. She can say, I'm just a girl, can you take one of my slaves, can you take someone else? No, she will have to pay for the crime of murder. Everybody is personally responsible. They cannot offset that responsibility to someone else. That's what al-hurru bil-hurri, wal-abdu bil-abdi, wal-untha bil-untha means. Now, what does qisas mean? Qisas is three options. One, life is taken and you have the right to demand that life be taken from the other side. That person should be executed. That's what the Muslim has the right to ask the court of law to do, the family of the victim. The second option is they can sue him. It's called blood money, fidya, blood money. And that means basically a lawsuit, where you killed our father, you killed our brother, you killed someone, he was the provider in our family, and we suffered these many damages because of you, we're suing you. So it's like a financial retribution. The third is the family has the right to forgive the criminal. Yeah, we don't want anything from you. We just want to forgive you. It's okay. End it. But all three options, even though the court makes the decision, who has the decision-making capacity in their hands? The family does. When the verdict has been passed that this person is guilty, then their sentencing is in the hands of the family. That's the Islamic principle. Now compare that to Western law. Without telling someone that this is Islamic, you go to the family of a murder victim. Go to his family. And you know when they go to court and they finally prove the guy is guilty, what happens? He gets life in prison, or he gets 10 years and he gets out for good behavior, or whatever. You have deals, all kinds of stuff. You go to the family of the victim, and you say to the family of the victim, look, imagine a court ruling, imagine a state law, where after the guilty verdict had been passed, you have the right to decide, you, the mother of your killed son, have the right to decide, should this person be executed? Should I sue this person for a certain amount of money? Or should I forgive him altogether? You have the right to decide. Would you prefer that or the way things run now? What would any human being prefer? Any family of any victim? Qisas. They take Sharia law even in Tennessee. They take it. Just don't tell them it's Sharia. So long as you don't tell them, they're fine with it. It's incredible. You know how families of murder victims have no sense of closure? They have no peace. Because he's still eating free food inside prison. He's still living it up. They have no closure. They have no peace inside. And eventually they even set free and they protest and nothing happens out of it. They're not given peace. They'll come and give a press release and say, we didn't get peace. That's not justice. I don't know why we call it the justice system if there's no justice in it. This is qisas. It's a powerful law. It's a powerful, powerful law. And then you would think Islam is a religion of forgiveness, so maybe Allah says that we should just constantly just keep forgiving. No. Allah Azza wa Jalla says, and it's coming a little bit later, but let me finish this ayah first. فَمَنْ عُفِيَ لَهُ مِنْ أَخِيهِ شَيْءٌ. Then if something was pardoned for him from his brother, something was forgiven for him from his brother, فَاتِّبَاعٌ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. Then it should be followed in a decent fashion. In other words, his brother, and the guy who killed, the family of the victim, who are their Muslim brothers still, they forgave him. Then that forgiveness should be followed. Like you shouldn't say, well, he shouldn't get away with murder. We should kill him anyway. No. The family had the right to decide that. They already forgave him. You be quiet now and just follow it in a decent way. بِالْمَعْرُوفِ وَأَدَاءٌ إِلَيْهِ بِإِحْسَانٍ. And if they ask for money, then it should be delivered in the best possible way. That blood money should be delivered in the best possible way. ذَلِكَ تَخْفِيفٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ. That is a lightening from your master. Lightening meaning the only verdict could have been an eye for an eye, person for a person. But he made a financial compensation option open. And that's Allah lightening the burden on a society. وَرَحْمَةٌ. And it's a mercy also. فَمَنْ اعْتَدَى بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ. And then whoever violates after that, whoever doesn't take this law into account and still violates, فَلَهُ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Then he will have exclusively torture, painful torture. وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاتٌ. And for all of you Muslims, believers, for all of you, especially in qisas, there's life. In taking retribution, in taking a life for a life. There is life in it. In killing, there is life. Qisas is the final option, that I want him to die. That's qisas. Allah says, in qisas there is life for you. Why does He say that? Because if the society constantly forgave, what would happen to murderers? If the society was just known, the norm is to forgive, then murderers would get a free pass. And if the norm became, well, if somebody murders, we should just, fine them $100,000, then the wealthy would become like mass murderers. So I can afford it. I hate that guy. What does Allah say? You should do qisas sometimes. You should ask for the life sometimes. Because what will that produce in society? The protection of life. When the criminal feels like he can get away with murder without losing his life, then the license to kill becomes opened. وَلَكُمْ فِي الْقِصَاصِ حَيَاتٌ. In it is preservation of life for you. Individually we're supposed to be forgiving. Societally we're supposed to execute punishment sometimes. Because it keeps society in order. It keeps society in check. Ya ulil albab, people of pure minds, لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So that all of you may protect yourselves. Tattaqun here is not in the spiritual sense, it's a physical, literal sense. So you may be able to protect yourselves in society. You should exercise qisas. كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذَا حَضَرَ أَحَدَكُمُ الْمَوْتِ. It has also been written upon you that when death presents itself to one of you, إِن تَرَكَ خَيْرًا, that he should leave something good. الْوَصِيَّةُ لِلْوَالِدَيْنِ, a will for both parents, وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ, and for and close relatives, the closest relatives, بِالْمَعْرُوفِ, with what is known to be decent. Al-ma'ruf is what is known to be decent expectations in society. Like, By the way, when death presented itself to who in the surah already? Yaqub. What did he leave for his family according to Quran? He left them a question. What was the question? We're going to worship after I'm gone. You know, before Allah mentioned if death presents itself to any one of you, He already mentioned death presenting itself to Yaqub. And He already mentioned what good He left for His family. So before you think about the money and the wealth and the business should be in this name and the car should go to him and this and that and the other, what should you think about first? What advice are you leaving your family? You know, when a person dies, or they're about to die, their words are remembered forever. Right before a person dies, the things they say just get imprinted on a person's mind. They can't forget them. You know, your grandmother, your uncle, your brother, father, you know, that you just can't forget. And at that point, what did Yaqub alayhi salam use that opportunity to do? Give the most important words he could. What are you going to worship after I'm gone? What are you going to do after I'm gone? So this is the first hint already here in this surah. But the second, leave something good in a decent way. Now, decency is general. حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ. It's a right mandated on those who have taqwa. This should leave something general. The law of inheritance has just been established. You should leave something with parents and closest relatives. It should be decent, it should be a good amount, and it's something that is a right that is expected from the people of taqwa to fulfill. It's an expectation from them. Allah didn't specify proportions here yet. That will come in, which surah? Surah An-Nisa. Okay, so He left it general for now, early law. فَمَنْ بَدَّلَهُ. Then whoever changed it. In other words, a person's on his deathbed and he made certain pronouncements that my assets should be distributed this way or that way. Not everybody was present, somebody was present. Now that person becomes the ambassador for the deceased, doesn't he? The dead person can't speak for himself anymore, and maybe they didn't really leave a written will, they just said it, that's it. So this is the only person who knows what was said. فَمَنْ بَدَّلَهُ. Then whoever changed it, بَعْدَمَا سَمِعَهُ. Even after he had heard it, فَإِنَّمَا إِثْمُهُ. Then the sin of it will be عَلَى الَّذِينَ يُبَدِّلُونَهُ. On those who change it. Those who change it will carry its sin. In other words, they're going to be paying for that on Judgment Day. إِنَّ اللَّهَ سَمِيعٌ عَلِيمٌ. They shouldn't think they're the only ones who heard the dead man or the person who almost died talking. Allah certainly is all hearing, all knowing. فَمَنْ خَافَ مِن مُوصٍ جَنَفًا. Then whoever fears from the one who's dying and leaving a will that they're going to be partial. Janafan, they're partial, biased. أَوْ إِثْمًا. Or they fear that they're going to have sin in it. Meaning they say, the rest of my proceeds, just buy everybody in town a beer with them. Or something crazy like that. You fear that they're going to leave their will and do something stupid with it. Or they're going to be partial, they're going to give one son more than the other unfairly, etc., etc. Then فَأَصْلَحَ بَيْنَهُمْ. Then He made reconciliation between them. In other words, He divided it evenly and He made it fair. He took the evil out of it. فَلَا إِثْمَ عَلَيْهِ. Then this person who changed the wrong, corrupt will and made it right, there's no sin on him. إِنَّ اللَّهَ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Certainly Allah is extremely forgiving, always merciful. يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الصِّيَامُ. Those of you who have iman, fasting has been prescribed upon you, has been written upon you as law. These are the early laws of fasting, as you'll see. كَمَا كُتِبَ عَلَى الَّذِينَ مِن قَبْلِكُمْ. Just as they were written on those who came much before you. لَعَلَّكُمْ تَتَّقُونَ. So that you may attain taqwa. The purpose of fasting is taqwa. And Allah says, just like they were given to those before you, because the early laws of fasting were, we fasted on the same days as the Jews fasted. We had the same days of fasting, okay? That's why it says, just like it was given to those who came before you, because it was exactly like that. It was exactly like that. أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَةٍ. They're just a handful number of days. If you say أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَةً, it came before in the surah, لَن تَمَسَّنَا النَّارُ إِلَّا أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَةً. Few days. أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَات, the feminine plural is considered جَمْعُ قِلَّة, a minimal plural. It implies very, very few days, less than 10 days. Less than 10 days. And these are the 3 middle days of every month that the Muslims used to fast early on, before the coming of Ramadan. That's what it's referring to. Just a handful of days. فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْكُمْ مَرِيضًا. Then whoever has been sick among you, أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ, or has been in the midst of travel, فَعِدَّةٌ مِنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرٍ. Then there's a number from other days that he has to make up. In other words, if you miss 3-4 days of those mandatory, then you should make those up later on. وَعَلَى الَّذِينَ يُطِيقُونَهُ فِدْيَةٌ. And on those who have the power to do so, they should compensate. Fidya. They should give some kind of compensation. طَعَامُ miskin. What should that fidya be? For each fast, the feeding of a poor person. Now, the early laws of fasting are, if you miss a fast, you can make it up, or if you have the financial means, what can you do? You could pay a poor person. 2 ways you can make up for a fast. 2 options. Okay, keep that in mind. فَمَنْ تَطَوَّعَ خَيْرًا, then whoever volunteered and did good, in other words, they made up the fast and fed a poor person, فَهُوَ خَيْرٌ لَهُ, then it's good for him. All the better. Congratulations to you. وَأَنْ تَصُومُوا, and if you were to fast, in other words, to make up the lost fast, if you did fast, instead of just paying off for the poor, خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ, it would be better for you. وَأَنْ تَصُومُوا خَيْرٌ لَكُمْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ, if in fact you have known, if you understand what I'm saying, if you catch my drift, as we say. If you really know what's good for you, then you will make it up by fasting. This was once again the pre-Ramadan law. Now let's see, the next ayah is about Ramadan law. What's happening to fasting in Ramadan, how is it different? Watch. Shahru Ramadan, the month of Ramadan, alladhi unzila fihi al-Quran, is the one in which the Quran was sent down. Ramadan, we think of it as the month of fasting. Allah wants us to think of it as the month in which the Quran came down. It's the month of Quran, not the month of fasting. The ayah before talked about the purpose of fasting. What was the purpose of fasting? You got taqwa. Remember that. Purpose of fasting is taqwa. We're going to see the purpose of Ramadan a little later. Purpose of Ramadan is different, purpose of fasting is different. For us it's the same thing, right? We mix the two together. Every time you think of Ramadan, you think of pakode, samosa, french fries, you know. That's what comes in your head. Lassi, lassi every day. Right? That's the only thing in your head. I'm going to gain so much weight this Ramadan, it's going to be awesome. Most people don't lose weight in Ramadan. Right? But Allah Azza wa Jalla is painting a different picture. First of all, you need to think of Ramadan as the month of, not fasting, the month of the Quran. The month in which the Quran was sent down. Hudal lin-nasi. And then he dedicates a good half of this ayah just talking about how great the Quran is. A guidance for all people. The Jews used to fast on certain days. They were totally offended when we started praying a different direction. Now they're super awesome offended because now we're even fasting a different month. And why are we fasting a different month? Because we have a different revelation. We're celebrating Quran in Ramadan. Oh my God, this is humiliation on top of humiliation. And then Allah goes further to say, no, this is not just guidance for you. You're not just a select nation. This is guidance for who? All of mankind. And the Jews used to think that their guidance is for what? Just themselves. Another slap in the face. وَبَيِّنَاتٍ مِّنَ الْهُدَى وَالْفُرْقَانِ, and there are clear proofs that it is guidance. And it's the distinguisher between right and wrong. It has exposed the wrong that they did also. Celebrate this Quran as you are a new nation now. So celebrate it in your own month. This is the month that describes you as a different nation, the month of Ramadan. The month of Ramadan is a celebration of Muslim identity as people of Quran. We don't think of it like that. That's what it is in Quran. The 2 things that made us different. Change of Qibla, change of fasting months. Those are the 2 things. Then he says, هُدًى لِلنَّاسِ وَبَيِّنَاتٍ مِّنَ الْهُدَى وَالْفُرْقَانِ فَمَنْ شَهِدَ مِنْكُمُ الشَّهْرَ فَلْيَصُمْهُ. Whoever among you witnesses the month, he should fast the whole month. Before I told you how many days were there? How many days in a month? Yeah, actually some say 3. 3 every month. Middle 3 days of every month. And Allah said, أَيَّامًا مَعْدُودَةً, very few days. Now Allah is saying, whoever sees the month, witnesses the month, should fast it. Means how many days now? The whole month. Is this harder or easier? This is harder. Already 1 step harder because it's more days. Let's see number 2. Then he says, وَمَنْ كَانَ مَرِيضًا, and whoever had been sick, أَوْ عَلَى سَفَرٍ, or was in the midst of a journey, فَعِدَّةٌ مِّنْ أَيَّامٍ أُخَرَ, then he has to make it up in other days. Were there 2 options before? What were the 2 options? You can make it up or you could pay a miskin. Now how many options? Having 2 options is easier or having 1 option is easier? Having 2 options is easier. This became harder because it's 30 days. This became harder because there's only 1 option now. You got to make it up. You can't just pay someone. It changed. So you say to yourself, the believer listens to this and says, wow, this just got harder. This is hard. What are the very next words? يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ بِكُمُ الْيُسْرَى. Allah wants ease for you. وَلَا يُرِيدُ بِكُمُ الْعُسْرَى. He does not want difficulty for you. How awesome is that? First he made it, you would think he made it harder, and then Allah says, no, actually, I did this because I want ease for you. And I don't want difficulty for you. Let's understand then, how come fasting got harder and Allah says, I made it easy? I want ease for you. What was the purpose of fasting? Taqwa. Okay? You know, is taqwa something easily attained or hard to attain? Hard to attain. Okay. If Allah says fasting builds taqwa, and taqwa is, by the way, what will give you guidance. This book is guidance for people of taqwa. The more you fast, the more taqwa you'll have. The more taqwa you'll have, the more ready you are to take in this guidance. Allah wants guidance to come to you easily, which for it to come to you easily, you'll need a lot of taqwa. To get a lot of taqwa, you'll have to fast a lot. So you fast in the day, build your taqwa, and then listen to Quran at night. It'll become easier for you to take it in. Otherwise, you won't be able to process this guidance. You need a proper training regimen to build your relationship with the Quran. Allah wants ease for you. And if you really do get taqwa and guidance, people who have taqwa and guidance, are they promised a life of ease here and in the next life or no? Allah wants true ease for you, not just here, forever. Allah doesn't want difficulty for you, not here, not ever. That's why I made it tougher for you, so you can really become people of taqwa. When you realize what Allah has just done, He has made taqwa easier for us, and through taqwa He has made the access to guidance easier for us in this month of guidance, the month of the Quran. Then let's understand how the ayah ends. وَلِتُكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةَ. And I gave you this so you could complete the count. وَلِتُكَبِّرُوا اللَّهَ عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ. And so you can declare the greatness of Allah based on how He guided you. عَلَى مَا هَدَاكُمْ. Based on how He guided you. Meaning pray in the way Allah guided you to pray. This is really how you declare Allah's greatness, by fasting and committing yourselves to Quran. He adds, وَلَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. And so that hopefully, hopes are you'll become grateful. Question is, grateful for what? Some scholars argue here, grateful is when you fast, you realize those who don't have food, how much blessings you've been enjoying your whole life. You get a little taste of hunger in Ramadan, and you become grateful that Allah provides me regular meals. Others say no. What is the blessing directly mentioned in this surah, in this ayah? The blessing mentioned is, this is the month of Quran. If anything should come out of Ramadan, you should be grateful for having been given the gift of the Quran. That's what you should be grateful for. On top of that, what should you be grateful for? That Allah gave you a month in which the one thing that you need the most in life, guidance. And shaitan is dedicated to making sure you don't get guidance. Allah chained up the shaitan, the one guy that keeps you from getting taqwa. First He got rid of him, then He gave you something that builds your taqwa, which is fasting, so that you can get guidance from this Quran. How grateful can you be to Him? لَعَلَّكُمْ تَشْكُرُونَ. And now that you become, when you start receiving guidance from the Quran, you start getting connected to the Quran, then now you'll learn to ask Allah properly. وَإِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي عَنِّي. Whenever my slave asks you about me, فَإِنِّي قَرِيب, then I'm near. Allah is closest to us in what month? Ramadan. Allah is close to us all the time. We're closest to Him in Ramadan. I say it the other way. When do we ask Allah more? In Ramadan. Shaitan's gone, distractions are gone, taqwa is building. We're asking Allah. فَإِنِّي قَرِيب. Then tell Him, I'm near. أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ. I respond to the call of the one who calls. إِذَا دَعَانِ. Whenever He calls. Well, it's so beautiful that Allah says that. I told you important people, you remember them, they don't remember you. You remember that? Important people, you call them, they don't call you. You know that? You call them, they don't call you back. You say, Shaykh, I left you a voicemail. Yeah, join the club. I have 3,000 voicemails. Ustad, I sent you an email, I didn't hear an answer. I'm sorry. You send someone a message, you don't get an answer back. Allah Azza wa Jalla talks about Himself. Call me anytime. What will I do? Ujibu da'wat ad-da'i. I respond to the call of the caller, إِذَا دَعَانْ, whenever he calls. Day, night. Is this an appropriate time? Yes, it is. When you call someone important, you worry, is this the right time? Are they going to be angry if I call them right now? Are they going to be too busy for me? Allah says, whenever you call. It's so beautiful. فَلْيَسْتَجِيبُوا لِي. Then they should try to respond to me too. Then they should. Lam al-amr here. You should try to respond, not respond, try to respond. Allah said, Ujibu, I respond completely. But when it came to us, He didn't say, Fal yujibu, then they should respond. He said they should try to respond at least to me. Wal yu'minu bi, and they should believe in me. لَعَلَّهُمْ يَرْشُدُونَ, so they can be set straight. So they can be put in the right direction. We'll conclude our dars for the day here, inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu li wa lakum fil Qur'an al-Hakim. Wa nafa'ani wa iyyakum bil ayati wa dhikr al-Hakim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.